So it's good to be back here in Oak Park. It's been a while. I think this is actually my first time here since I've been home, and I've been home for a couple months now. But I'm excited to share with you the experiences that I had on the short mission trip that I went on to the Philippines. It definitely was life-changing, and I definitely would recommend it for anybody. And I know that I have a lot of kids in the audience here, one of which I am. And so I just want to encourage you guys as you listen to this, think about what you can do. In Sabbath school, you guys have all been learning about many different mission needs across the country, across the world, in many different countries. And so God has a work for each one of us personally, and He'll lead you in the path that He is calling you, even if it's just here at home. And this is a huge mission field right here in Barrington and Yarmouth and the surrounding towns of Nova Scotia. So where was I to start off? For those of you who don't know, I went to PAMAS, it's called. It's an organization that stands for Philippine Adventist Medical Aviation Services. And it is located, it actually is like an umbrella. They have 3 bases, and they're starting a 4th one. And the one I was on is in Palawan, the island of Palawan. So what they have in Palawan is 5 jungle schools that they in the mountains surrounding where in the lowlands where they are. They have their most famous known ministry is their medical aviation, which we'll learn more about. They also have a lifestyle center that's been newly started, and that's what I was going to help with. They also have a dental and medical clinic, and there's lots of always construction going on right now. They're building a senior high school for the young people of the mountains, the Palawan people. And then they also have, don't quote me on this number, but I think it's about 12 Bible workers in families working in the area, and they've started many churches and church plants. And so they are really carrying on God's work here near Brooks Point in Palawan. So I have a map to show you where I was. So here you can see this is the whole islands of the Philippines, and I'm just on the little island, Palawan, in the circled area of Brooks Point. That's where I was. Here's a picture of, I actually didn't take this, but my friend did. And so the apartments that we were staying in is very close to that area, and those would be teachers' housing. That's more traditional housing, and that's where they would stay when they come down. And then in the far picture you can see a girls' dorm, and that's where some students from the mountains will stay when they're going to senior high school. So the health center that I went to help in, it has kind of 3 different parts: the lifestyle, dental, and the medical. And God's really blessed, and they have some nice modern equipment to do things like hydrotherapy. And so I was amazed. There was facilities there that were familiar to me, and they had nice tanks for doing contrast baths and fever baths, and then the shower. At Wildwood we called it the car wash because the water comes from all different angles, and it is quite the experience when it goes to cold. And then there's also the massage. And so the people I lived with were 3 nurses. All of them were 25 years old. I am not a nurse. I just had the privilege of staying with them. And so I loved them all. They were amazing to me, and we had great times together. And the one in the middle with me is Ate Diane, and she and I became very, very close, and we did a lot of things together. And so it's fun now having a contact there to continue to see how the Lord's working there, even now that I'm gone. So the first story section I'm going to tell you about, I had many, many experiences in 3 months, and all of them were amazing. So I'm just trying to figure out how to break down my experiences to share them with you. And so what we're going to start out with is the jungle school checkups. It was a very exciting, I've never done anything quite like it before, so it was very new and exciting. And so I said earlier they have 5 jungle schools closest one is about a 45-minute hike. The farthest one's about a 2-hour hike into the jungle through little trails. So here's me on a few of the hiking journeys. So the first Sabbath, we went to a jungle school just to be with the teachers on Sabbath. It's very peaceful in the mountains. And then later on, a couple weeks later, they do a biannual jungle school checkup to the schools there for the children, doing a medical clinic, dental, giving them dewormer, just different things like that every 6 months. And so it just happened to fall right when I was there. So I got to do that. I'll show you pictures later on. Here are just some animals that you see along the pathways. Have the water buffaloes, the cows, and goats, and the caribou. And then here's just houses you might see going through the jungle, just a little hut with, the grass roof. And then there's also a meal that we had, rice, of which is the staple. And then I think that was a mung bean topping with some soy fake meat or something. Here is the closest jungle school, which I was saying was 45-minute hike. That's the top of it. And I took the pictures from the helicopter pad. So each one of these jungle schools have a helicopter pad. Some of them are literally the size of up here or smaller. They're very small, just enough for the skids of the helicopter to land on. Sometimes it's not even quite enough. So it's just small, but that's how we transport patients from the mountains, because a lot of health care is not available to them because you have to hike people 2 hours down the mountain from the farthest one, or these ones are shorter hikes, and that's difficult. And so we can have the helicopter for emergencies. Within 5 minutes of leaving here, we can be on the roof of the hospital. So it really is saving lives, the aviation ministry. Here's one school, they're not very good pictures, I know, but there's a classroom. The one on the left is just the edge of a classroom, and then there's a big tree there that the kids like to play under. Here's from the helicopter, this picture was taken, and so you can see a little village, like they lived close together in the mountains just so that they can support each other. So those are their little huts. The main occupation, of course, is farming, and so this blew me away. This is a very steep slope, and those are all pole beans that are growing. And it was just amazing to see how they literally can grow anything. Grow things anywhere. We find, at least I do, find slopes a little inconvenient because then the water runs off, and anyway, they take advantage of what they grow there. Then there's the caribou who do most of the work. This one has a skid behind it that it's pulling, so they would load that up with rice and this one was here in the mountains. That's a very steep slope there on too, and they're plowing the field, getting ready to plant. This is one of the other schools we went to, and this one is it has the most buildings. It actually has a little clinic, and this would be the teacher's house. The one with all the clothes hanging is the teacher's house, and next to it is the classroom. And so I'm going to tell you some stories that came from this particular school. Many eventful things happened there. This is what it would look like on the medical checkup. We had a doctor actually an endocrinologist visiting us from Poland, so he came with us. So with translation, he was doing little checkups on the kids, and then we had different medicines we could give out, or vitamins, and then the dental work was happening. It definitely doesn't look like dental work that happens here. We don't have to have very clean facilities and a dental clinic. We just can go into the classroom, clean the desks, pull out the benches, and they just go with what they have. And they have all these basins, or they sanitize the utensils, or not utensils, the equipment. And so they're pulling teeth, and unfortunately, that is the main dental thing there, is actually pulling teeth that are not able to stay in because they're actually starting to rot just because of low hygiene. And then they also put, what is the term for it? Fluoride. They put fluoride on the kids' teeth to prevent decay in the future if there's some that were just minor. And then this is a team of us, a group from Angel One, which is the umbrella network of, it kind of has all the aviation ministries under it, just to help everybody to realize that there's support for them, and they're not alone in their mission work in all different countries. And so it's based, Canada and the US, and they come together and they can learn from each other. And so they sent a team of missionaries there to do a construction project where I was, but then we took two of the girls. One of them was actually my classmate at Fountain View, Hannah, so that was fun to see. And so we got to go up to the jungle school together. That was really neat. Here's just a lineup of people after we serve the children, the students. Then any community and parents can come. And so as you can see on the one deck on the left, they're lined up. This was the farthest school. This one was 2 hours hike in, and so there was a lot of people coming for help. Here's a picture. This little boy was only 3 or 4 years old, and him and his sister were playing and were left alone in their house, and they got playing with a machete, and so he cut the tip of his finger off. But because there's no health care, what do you do? And so they didn't do anything. And so when the nurses found it, it was, they had to finish taking it off. It hadn't come off completely. So that was really sad, and we didn't have all the conveniences of anesthesia and things that we would have now down in the, in the valleys. Then this little baby came. It was like 5 or 6 months old, but it was very malnourished. It was very tiny. And so unfortunately, there in the mountains, mostly don't name their children till they're 1 year old, because the chance of them living to be that old is quite low. And so that's just a way they, to help cope with the grief of it, is to just not name the child until they're above 1, because they have a better chance of survival. This baby here was much healthier. It had much better nutrition. It also was an older mother. There's a lot of teenage mothers, 15, 16, 17-year-olds. So that doesn't help with the health either of the little ones. And so it was just an opportunity, even though there was a language barrier. The Palawano people, they don't speak a lot of English. So all I could do was smile and hand motions and the few words here and there, but it was an incredible experience, and by translation we could talk, and they're just such sweet people. They're content with what they have, always smiling, always happy. You never see them have a bad day. And even though their living conditions are very poor sometimes, and to me, coming from a first world country, it was shocking to see how they live. But it really touched me to see how they're just, they're such genuine people. And when they catch a hold of God's love, when they learn about God's love for them, it just lights up their faces. And that's what it just is so exciting, to share God's love with people around us and in other countries. How they get goods up to those schools, because there's not enough missionaries to start hiking everything up. We have done that too, but every month they've partnered actually with another ministry called Child Impact. And so all the jungle schools, they came and looked at the jungle schools, and they're just like, you're doing such an incredible work. We want to get funding for you to have a feeding program so that every day these children can have one solid meal. And so because of their partnership with POMIS, they're now all these schools, all the kids get 1 meal a day, hot meal, full meal, and it's just incredible. So once a month or 2 times a month, the teachers come down from the mountains. They buy food, like big bags of rice, all the vegetables and stuff to make the side dishes. And then once a month, every first Monday of the month, the helicopter takes all these supplies in the helicopter and flies them up and drops them off at the 5 jungle schools. That way they can have the supplies they need for the whole month. And so I got to go on a couple rides in the helicopter, going up to the jungle schools, and that was quite the experience. And it was just so fun watching the kids. They're all waiting. You can see them all, and there's a safe distance away from the landing pad, which is just up the path, and they're just waiting, and as soon as you land and they know it's safe, they come running to the helicopter to get all the supplies and then run back to the school with it. And so it's such a neat experience. Here's the man on the left was the helicopter pilot, and then some of us others that we came in that load on the helicopter. Here's some pictures of students. That boy is walking to school. On the left, he's walking to school, and he has his umbrella with him. It was probably going to rain, and so a large leaf from the vegetation makes incredible umbrellas, and they work very well. And then they also had a little adventure camp for the kids, and so you can see them on the right there. They're doing Samaritan carry and all sorts of things. Here was 2 kids. This one time we got rained out. We were in the mountains for the weekend, and then Sabbath night it downpoured. Downpoured like I have never seen here and never seen since, but downpoured all night long. And then into the next day on Sunday. And we had crossed several rivers to get to the trailhead to go to the jungle school. And when we looked at the river from where we were, there was no way we're crossing that river going back, because it was way higher and the current would be way too strong. We would not stand a chance. And so we're like, well, we kind of need to get down to base. We don't want to have to be up here for a couple days while the river subsides. So they're just like, well, there is another way down the mountain, but Ate Diane did not know the path for it. She didn't know the trail. So as we were walking, we found these kids, asked them if they knew the way, and they said yes. And so they led us until the trailhead where we knew to take us down. So it was just really fun experiences. Here's the team from the base, the one taking the picture. He was our lifestyle director. So we had lots of fun with that whole group, doing lots of, just do all the, as you'll see, he was involved in all of those. We had great times together. But the next story I want to share with you is about a man, and he was also in that one jungle school. And he is one that I learned, his story is still continuing, but I learned a really deep spiritual lesson from interacting with him and watching his health and everything that went on. I'm going to keep the story brief because it is long, can be long, and it still is continuing. But when we went there for this school, we went for a medical checkup, and he was carried in. And when I first saw him, I saw a picture of didn't see a picture. I looked at his foot, and it was very clear that he was in serious condition. And at first, I thought it was an injury that hadn't healed, had been super infected, and all that. But then the other nurses came over, and they just said, "Kuya," which means older brother. "What has happened?" That's a translation. And he didn't really look at them. He didn't know what to say. And he was you could tell that he was maybe ashamed. And I learned later that he had diabetes, and that diabetes, when you have really high blood sugars that are uncontrolled, you can develop wounds, and they don't heal just because the sugar level in your blood is so high. And so he was having many complications from this, and he's just young. He's just in his early 30s, and he has a family. And so they had brought him down for a lifestyle 5-day lifestyle program for him. And in 5 days, they had brought his blood sugars, which were super high, down to a normal level. His foot was healing. He was doing so well. Then he went back to the mountains and returned to his same lifestyle, because it's very difficult to change. And now, when we saw him here, his foot was in way worse condition than when they had first seen him. And so we were like, we don't quite know what to do to help him right here. We don't have the proper supplies, because it would take to clean his foot. So we just soaked it in salt water to sterilize it a little bit. And then I took his blood sugar, and it was, just the glucometer just read high. It was just off the mark. And so you could tell there was a little bit of conversation about it's not really worth bringing the helicopter up, because it's a lifestyle. Like, he has to change his lifestyle. Smoking, drinking, eating all kinds of things, including dogs. It was just a not good lifestyle. And so, but it's hard for these people. It's hard for any of us to change without God's help. And so we're like, we really need to share Christ with him, because only Christ is going to give him the willpower to change and turn his life around. So Ezekiel 33, later as I've been contemplating his story and just there, Ezekiel 33, which was our scripture reading, says, "Say unto them, As I live, saith the Lord God, I have no pleasure in the death of the wicked, but that the wicked turn from his way and live. Turn ye from your evil ways, for why will ye die, O house of Israel?" And we couldn't help but look at him and wonder, why are you choosing to die? Because we also later, he was carried down to the hospital. He was in line for an amputation. By the mercies of the Lord, he didn't have to. They had started the surgery, found that there was still a little bit of circulation, so they were able to save his leg, but it's still not looking good for him. And we're just like, why is he so stubborn? Why doesn't he change? But then I was thinking about, how often am I the same way? Like, when I know things aren't good for me, why don't I change now? It's this. So his case was more obvious, because you could see it. He was actively not doing well. Whereas sometimes in our lives, we can kind of convince ourselves that we're doing okay, even though we're not. So in Proverbs 26, verse 2, we also read, "As the bird by wandering, and as the swallow by flying, so the curse causeless shall not come." And so there's always there's a direct cause for many of the things that happen to us in our lives. And so for him, we had, the cause was determined, and that was what was leading to his sickness. And so if he took away what was causing it, his body would be able to heal and recover. And then in Ecclesiastes, I was having this Bible study later. I was reading these verses, and they were really hitting home to me in a new way. And in Ecclesiastes, it says, "Because sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, therefore the hearts of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil." And I hadn't seen this verse before, and in the context of curse causeless shall not come, I read and I was like, wow, we can do things for, in his case, maybe 20 years. In other people's case, we can do things for a long time, but in God's mercy, he doesn't allow us to reap the consequences the same day we do it, because he's in his mercy. But because there is a delay, it sets our hearts towards evil continually, and I was really getting a deeper picture of what was going on in this man's, and realizing that what he needed was Christ's power to overcome. And what I need in my life is Christ's power to overcome. Because of ourselves, we can't do anything. And then in Jeremiah, you read the beautiful words, "For I will restore health unto thee, and I will heal thee of thy wounds, saith the Lord." So if we will turn from our evil ways, like Ezekiel says, God wants to heal our wounds and heal us. And so that's what we've been the whole team was trying to encourage him and tell him about Christ's power to change our lives. And I was just seeing for him, I was like, we're not necessarily even just fighting for his temporal healing. He's on the verge of his eternal destiny, because once you die, you're either going to be on the Christ side or not. And so we wanted him to have the power to live, and that power came through Christ. And so in Lamentations, we read this: through the Lord's mercies we are not consumed, because his compassions fail not. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I hope in him. And so later, since I've left, they were able to convince him to come back to Palmas, and he stayed there for 15 days. But the whole time, he wasn't necessarily in full cooperation to be there. And so he has since gone back to the mountains, and again, he's not doing well again. But we continue to pray for him, because we know that the Lord's compassions fail not. And we've really seen that in his case. And so they're continuing to fight for his life and fight for his salvation as long as he has breath within him. And it really has inspired me personally. How often do I do the same thing in little things? When we make small choices day by day that later we're going to reap the consequences of. And so it's just helped me to pause and ponder. So anyway, that was one story that I shared and wanted to share because it really stood out to me. But we'll move on. I have more pictures and more stories as well. So church experiences. This was the first church I went to. It was actually in the mountains as well. And so it had benches and a concrete floor and walls. And it was just so cool to see, you hike up, the wind, the mountain breeze is blowing through the open windows. Well, there's no windows, it's just, a hole with curtains. And it was just, here was another jungle. This one was actually in a classroom, and I actually got to share that Sabbath. And so it was just we had a great time together. Here's another church building right by one of our schools. This one doesn't have walls. It just has a roof and, a floor, and that's all you need. It doesn't even have benches. They just sit on the floor. But it doesn't matter. For it's a whole different climate, right? So you don't have to have the buildings that we need here because it's always warm. So you can not have walls on the church and you do okay. Here, this is the same church, the side view. It's a 360 view because you're on the ridge, and so you get to see the mountains everywhere. And I was like, wouldn't that be so cool to have church up there and be surrounded in a whole different way by God's creation? I mean, we are surrounded by nature here too. The lupins are blooming, the lilacs. It's gorgeous here as well. But it was definitely a neat experience. In the mission field, you also can have unexpected things, as here. So one day we were going to church in the lowlands, and I was with the director's kids. We were with them, and we were driving in the Palmas van, and there was a bunch of us, and we had a flat tire. And so we weren't going anywhere too soon. And so the kids were like, well, they're going to have to bring the spare tire because we don't have it with us from the base, and so it's going to be a long time. So why don't we just walk? We're only we were supposed to be only a few miles, but I think it was longer than that. But anyway, we were supposed to be so close to home. So we started out walking, and what we soon found ourselves in was this, because it had rained and the roads flooded, and so we were well past our knees in water. And anyway, it was just a blast. You never know. You went from nice driving in a vehicle to soon we were walking through interesting water. Didn't know what was in it, but it was good. But it was of choice. We could have waited, but it was still a fun experience. And then a truck that was going to help them had to drive through this. And so they went fast because they didn't want to get water up inside the truck, and so that ended our attempt of staying dry. We got soaked from head to toe when the truck went by. So and the next story set I'm going to tell you is Kamantian. There are other jungle schools because there's a lot of mountains ranges on this island, and AFM has also jungle schools that they started. They're actually now independent of AFM, but one of them was Kamantian, and they wanted the dentist from Palmas to come up and do a dental clinic there. And so the nurses and me were just like, well, do you need help with that dental clinic? And they're like, yeah, we always need help. So anyway, we ended up going with them, not because we were at all skilled in dentistry, but we went up to help and we wanted the experience. So this one here was about a 3-hour hike, and we started hiking, and so we came across people on the jungle trails, and this is how the locals carry their produce that they grow in the fields down to the mountains. So the one on the back is just a small kid, and they can have, the adults, the men can be carrying like 100 pounds, kids, maybe it's 30, 40, 50. It's just incredible loads, and they're climbing down steep trails, and it's easy to lose your footing without anything on your back, let alone a full load. Here's another picture of them carrying, and so they have these baskets, and it's just amazing to watch them. Here's a little video I thought I would show. This is just a whole bunch of them walking with their loads. Yeah, so, and then here at the base of the mountain, they have would be a convenience store, I guess, and so they have all their soaps and snacks and all the rest there. One thing that we were trying to help educate the people on was that the food that they grow in the mountains is so nutritious, and it's the best food that they can be eating. But because in the lower parts, what we eat as food is, sodas, chips, all the fast junk food, I guess it just comes across like that's what they eat, so that's what we should be eating. So they'll bring their produce down, sell it, get the money, and then take back up all the junk food. And so just trying to it's for us too, like I'm thinking, okay, how much, am I eating what's the best? But it's also like just trying to share with them what you guys are growing is the best food you can be eating because it's so nutritious. And so that was those. And then, it was so sweet. We were hiking through these little villages, like through the mountains, and they saw a group of us, and they were just like, they saw us coming. I don't know if they had little kids that were messengers or something, saw us ahead of time. They're just like, we haven't seen these missionaries before, because they knew where we were heading. And so they ran out to us with a bag full of sweet potatoes that they had grown. And they're just like, this is a gift for you guys coming to help us. And we're just like, no, we should be giving you guys gifts. But they were just so happy to see new missionaries coming through that they ran out to us with a bag of sweet potatoes, and it was just so sweet. They're always thinking about what they can do for others, even though they don't have a lot themselves. Dot Casey, who was the dentist, who was coming on the trip, she was the main person we needed on that trip, was the dentist. While she was hiking, she was hiking along, and on this last descent, there was like two groups. There was the group that likes to hike a little slower, the group that likes to hike a little faster. And so Atide and I were in the first group, and so we had already got to our destination, and we had taken a shower already, and we were settled. And then we hear somebody come down. They're just like, come back. Dot Casey got hurt. And we're just like, oh no. So we jumped up and started hiking back up. And the other nurse there grabbed, some things because she had twisted her ankle, we were told. And so we started running back up, and we hiked up, and we found her, and they were at this little gathering center here. And she had really badly twisted and just wrecked her ankle. And night was falling, it was basically dark, and we're just like, what are we going to do? We can't bring a helicopter to take her back down. we have to get her down, and we can't really carry her back in the middle of the night, 2 hours back out. And so we were just trying to weigh out the options. And then she was so determined. She's just like, I want to stay. Like I need to be able to do this mission that she was supposed to do on Sunday, which was the dental clinic. And so pretty soon the locals, they had it all figured out. They just cut down a big chunk of bamboo that's like, 4 or 5 inches. Somebody had a hammock. And so soon, before we knew it, they had a hammock tied to bamboo, and she was in a lot of pain, but we got her inside the hammock, and they hiked her down by flashlight on the left in the middle of the dark. It started to rain. The trail was very slippery, but there they go. These are just young guys, like 16 years old, 15, 14, and they're just carrying her down. It was just incredible. And then next day for church, they're carrying her up the hill to church. Anyway, it was really cool. Here's having worship, just in the little area there. And then here was church. They actually have a lot of students there, over 100 of them. And they're all such amazing children and kids. On the left side was where the boys are, and on the right side is the girls. And so they're separated, and they were doing a special music up front. And so this is from the front of the church. And then what happened next still continues to amaze me. It was just anyway, we're about to have potluck in a few hours, or an hour. And the potluck here was different than any other potluck I have been to before. And so we had brought actually, no, we didn't bring food. They had provided food. And so I just saw in the corner, big pots of rice and beans and whatever, all this food. I had been warned that something unique was going to happen, but I didn't quite know what that unique thing was going to be. I had heard little things about eating with your hands. I was like, okay, well, we can handle this. But anyway. So long story short, next thing I see is this. So they start pulling out these leaves, banana leaves, wrapped in rice, and they just lay them out on the floor. And because there's so many people, they want everybody to get an even amount of food. And so they just distribute the food evenly. So there's like 120 banana leaves, or like 130, and they just put on their little glove, and they're just like handful on each plate, and then until all the food is gone. And then they brought it to the guests first, of course, and they brought it to us. It was a lot of food. I think part of it is because it was all at once. We get seconds and thirds, and we don't realize we're eating as much. But when you're presented with there must have been like 5 cups of rice on one plate. And anyway, it was a lot of food, but it was just so it was such a cool experience. When they run out of plates, they just go get a banana leaf, cut it up, and then you have more plates. And so that was just the neatest potluck I have been to. And it was just a cool experience. Maybe sometime we'll have to try it. No, I'm joking. We don't have banana leaves, so that can be our excuse. Here also, instead of just having a helicopter, AFM there was enough space I also forgot the name of the plane too. Smaller than a Cessna. It has no walls. Anyway, it's just this very tiny plane. Literally holds 2 people, and it's kind of made of material almost. Anyway, so this is just a big enough runway for them. And so they could land here, and so afterwards you're having AY, and so this was us having AY there. And then on Sunday, we had a dental clinic. Got to do a few things helping, and so we had Doc Casey, she was sitting on a stool in the corner, so we would bring the patients, she would do all the anesthesia, and then she would pass on the patients because she couldn't walk. She was in a lot of pain with her ankle, but she was still faithfully doing her job. This is the team of us that went up there. And then because she couldn't hike back down, they carried her down to the helicopter on a stretcher. So here's them, they're carrying her down. So, yeah, so anyway, then the rest of there was enough room in the helicopter for a few more to go. So we were the only ones left to hike because there wasn't enough room and we wanted to hike down anyway. So we took the hike back down. And then we went to another jungle school that was just like, they said, oh, it's just a half an hour off, let's go see it. So we all wanted to go.
Was there a base on your hand the previous slide?
Yeah, I did a number to it. I overdid my wrist and it was having problems. So anyway, that's why that was braced. So anyway, when we went to this jungle school, we visited, and it's just one teacher, this lady, dear lady here. This is the helicopter pad we're on. Anyway, she has like 40 students, and then she runs another school that has like another 50, and it's just her. And then she has training her cousin, but she's there to help her people because she graduated from Comontion, that other school. She actually was able to go to Lowland, go to university, get her teaching degree, which is just unheard of for these people. And then she came back up, and instead of going anywhere she could have with that job, she wanted to come back and help her own people. So she came back, and now she's running Mother Video. She's single, she's not married, she's just working away. But then this is the neatest part. That little boy there, I think he's like 5 years old. Anyway, before his mother, the little boy's mother, died. And so the group there, they didn't know what to do with the child. She died in childbirth. And so they had told her that they're just going to bury the baby with the mother. And she was like, no, that can't happen. Because nobody had the option. Nobody wanted to take the baby in. So she's just like, no, give me the baby. I'll take care of the baby. I'll raise the baby. Don't bury the baby with the mother. And so she saved the baby. And so she is now the mother of this little boy. She actually has officially done adoption papers for it now. And so her and her little boy are happily, he's just as happy as a lark. When we went up there, they were harvesting peanuts and working away in their gardens in their spare time. And so I'll just challenge each one of you. This is just one person who has made an incredible difference. So never underestimate what each one of you can do. The rest of the places I was with, there was a whole team, but here it was just her, and she has done so much to help her people. Local market, here is some pictures. There's plantain and sweet potatoes, all sorts of things for sale. I guess they're on the top right picture. There's a little siesta happening before the market starts, I guess, sleeping on the market tables. Here's, they call it copra. It's the inside of coconut, so this is how they make coconut oil and different things. So they're drying it out on this concrete slab. So anyway, they're just drying it, and then they make coconut oil and all sorts of things. Here's more pictures, lots of mangoes, turmeric, cassava, all sorts of things. Then there's the top downs, they call them, or the tricycles, and they're just loaded loaded completely up. Things we would use pickup trucks for, if not dump trucks sometimes, no. They can fit all in just a motorbike with a shell. This next video I'm going to show you, I actually didn't see personally, but Ate Diane sent it to me, and so it was just, anyway, it's quite an experience. This was in the city, but this is one that's really loaded. So that would have been maybe almost 2 pickup trucks worth that they had fit on there. So very resourceful. Some of the fruit, here's mangosteen. I don't know how many of you guys, raise your hand if you've got to have mangosteen. Okay, so it is definitely my favorite fruit that I have ever tried. Some people, they call it the queen of all fruit. They call durian the king of all fruit. I think I would have to argue that this is the king of all fruit. But we continue to argue on that one. We haven't settled our, they haven't come to agreement with me on that one. But this is just an incredible fruit. And I was just thinking about it later. I was thinking of a little object lesson about it. I would call home, and my mom's had it, so she knows what I was talking about. But I'd be talking to my brothers and things or whatever and telling them, this is like the best fruit. Like, it's so sweet and like whatever, all this stuff. But you can't define the taste to them until they try it. Like, it's just, I can't stand up here and tell you guys about it and your mouth will start watering. Whereas me, when I'm looking at the picture, my mouth is watering. But it's like, and so then it hit me, this Bible verse. Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who trusts in him. So until we taste it for ourselves and see it for ourselves, it does not have the same impact as when we have it for ourselves. So it's the same with our experience with Christ. We need to taste and see personally that he is good. I know time is getting away, so I'm going to speed up here. Medical evacuations, I only went on one of them, and that was by helicopter to a jungle school. I don't have pictures of that one. There was a 17-year-old girl who was in labor, and anyway, she wasn't progressing, so we got to fly. We went up, got her, and then took her to the hospital, and she was actually able to have it successfully down in the hospital. And then here's another lady. She had an ectopic pregnancy, and so they're extremely painful and can be very life-threatening. And so there's all these islands, right, in the Philippines, and so a lot of them don't have hospitals, or if they do, it's very basic care. And so they do medical flights to get people from there and take them to the higher care hospitals. So that's what was happening in this one case. Here's a few pictures from the sky. This water is just so beautiful. The rice fields. Here's us in the plane. This was just one trip home. We weren't on a medical flight. But then community patients. Maybe sometime later I'll get to tell you more about this dear lady we got to work with at Northsea. She had cancer and she was sent home to die. But we were able to do a 20-day lifestyle program in her house. It really touched me, just getting to be in somebody's home. She only lived close to the base there, and we were able, we did sunbathe, take her out in the sun, getting her drinking water, changed her diet, like helped taught her whole family like how to cook healthfully, health lectures right there by the side of her bed. And so we had an amazing experience with her. I learned a lot from her. We had fun trying to communicate. She only knew a couple words of English, and she was having fun teaching me some words as I would help her. And so we just had this was another experience that really taught me a lot. Then we had lifestyle lectures. This was in the lifestyle center. All these people here are waiting for every week they have a free dental clinic, so people can come on Thursdays and get dental care. So while everybody's waiting in the waiting room, we get to share with them. We try to share lectures, so there I was sharing one with the people. Here was another lady who she has a tumor on her spine, and so she's been paralyzed for the last 2.5 years, and so she can't move from her waist down. So for her, her life seems very hopeless because she has 4 kids, but when she became paralyzed, her husband left her. And so she can't move, and when Thomas found her, she was just in a little tiny hut, and it leaked when it rained, and she can hardly move. Anyway, so they were able to get a sponsor for her from the US, and they built her a nice house. So as you can see, there's a window there that opens so she can see the sunshine. And anyway, they've been able to get now solar panels for her house so that she can have electricity. And her mom is there helping raise the kids because it kind of came on when she had her last child. And so her mother is raising the child and, doing everything for her. But we're trying to figure out now, even though we've tried different things, but her tumor in her spine does not seem to be easily, it's not shrinking very easily, but they're trying to find ways, like they're talking about what can we give her to have purpose in her life, even though she may never be able to walk again, unfortunately, just the damage is so significant. But they've talked about, getting her a sewing machine, like a battery run one, so that she can do work and feel like she has purpose. So they're really helping people in all the surrounding areas, trying to tell people about Christ, help them physically. And in Romans 10, verse 14 to 15, it says, "How then shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him of whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher? And how shall they preach unless they are sent?" So again, God has a special work for each one of you. And as we close, I just want us to briefly look at a story found in Luke chapter 5. Luke chapter 5, and then we'll wrap it up because I know it's getting late. This is a story that is familiar to all of us. So Luke chapter 5, and we're just going to draw a few lessons from it that I learned during my time there in the Philippines. Luke 5:17 to 26. "Now it happened on a certain day, as he was teaching, that there were Pharisees and teachers of the law sitting by, who had come out of every town of Galilee, Judea, and Jerusalem. And the power of the Lord was present to heal them. Then behold, men brought on a bed a man who was paralyzed, whom they sought to bring in and lay before him. And when they could not find how they might bring him in, because of the crowd, they went up on the housetop and let him down with his bed through the tilling into the midst before Jesus." Verse 20. "When he saw their faith, he said to him, 'Man, your sins are forgiven you.' But then the scribes and Pharisees began to reason, saying, 'Who is this who speaks such blasphemies? Who can forgive sins but God alone?' But then Jesus perceived their thoughts, and he answered and said to them, 'Why are you reasoning in your hearts? Which is easier, to say, "Your sins are forgiven you," or to say, "Rise up and walk"? But that you may know that the Son of Man has power on earth to forgive sins, he said to the man who was paralyzed, 'I say to you, arise, take up your bed, and go to your house.' So immediately he rose up before them, took up what he had been laying on, and departed to his own house, glorifying God. And they were all amazed, and they glorified God, and were filled with fear, saying, 'We have seen strange things today.'" So this is just an incredible picture of God's power to forgive our sins, and because he wants to prove to us the forgiveness that he is willing to give to each one of us if we will just accept it, he healed the man physically too. And so some lessons I just want to close with that I learned. It says a lot of times people cannot find Jesus because of the crowds and all the distractions in this world. There's people around, there's just so much going on that they can't find Jesus. But we can, what am I doing? Okay. The paralytic man was healed because of the faith of his friends. If it wasn't for the faith of his friends, he would have never been able to be brought to Jesus, and he may never have been healed. We must be people that will take risk, any risk for Jesus, because these friends they took a lot of risk in doing this. I don't know about that person's house, opening up the roof and everything. The house owners might not have actually appreciated that necessarily. So they might have got some negative feedback from many people, like, what are these guys doing? They're interrupting Jesus as he's teaching and healing, all sorts of things. But they were willing to do it all because they knew the power of Christ to heal. So I want to, let us all try to open more roofs for Jesus. Let's do anything that it takes to share Christ with those around us. And lastly, and I want just us all to think about this. What if someone can experience healing, not because of their faith, but because of your faith? Father in heaven, Lord, we thank you. Thank you for the work that you are doing all throughout this world. Thank you for the mercy and your continued faithfulness towards us. Lord, even though we are not always faithful in return. And Lord, I thank you for the privilege you gave me to be able to go and spend some time in the Philippines. Thank you for those who have also had the opportunity to do mission work in another country. And Lord, I pray that you will continue to show us what we might be able to do, where you are calling each one of us, because we know that there's a special place on earth for each one of us, that you have a special work. Just as much as there's a place in heaven for us, there's a work for us to do here on earth. And Lord, that just fills us with so much purpose and gives us an identity. But Lord, we know that there is a great mission field right here